How did Counter Blox, being one of the biggest FPS games on Roblox known for its intense and competitive gameplay, suddenly fall from grace? From being able to pull thousands of players with their own esports league, to being betrayed by their very own community and abandoned by the developers who created it. This is the devastating rise and fall of Counter Blox. But first, we have to go back to the very beginning to where it all started. Developed by Rolv, Counter Blox is a first-person shooter which is heavily inspired by Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Since Counter-Strike is classified as an 18+ game and is only accessible for a mature audience, there was a large demographic that was simply cut off from the experience of FPS games. However, this was a wonderful opportunity for the Rolv developers, who started working on the game in late 2014 and released its first version in July 2015, titled Counter Blox Sauce. The game involved two opposing teams against each other, the T's and the Cities. The main objective of the T's is to plant the bomb, while the Cities have to prevent the bomb from being planted or defused before it blasts. However, both teams also have an alternate path to victory, and that is to successfully eliminate all the members of the opposing faction. Even though the game had a lot in common with Counter-Strike with its gun sounds, maps, and user interface, it wasn't as smooth compared to the original game. In order to improve that, Rolv released an updated version, Counter Blox Roblox Offensive, which sounds very similar to its original counterpart. This version had better graphics, gun recoil patterns, and even had skins for guns, which made the game even more engaging to play. As Counter Blox grew in popularity, this led to the creation of a competitive league called the CBCL. It was a massive hit, with each season having different winners, which allowed young players to experience what it is like to be in an FPS tournament. Later, the league rebranded itself as RSL and hosted players from North America, South America, Europe, and even Asia. This received massive support from both the competitive and casual players. There is a competitive scene in Counter Blox? I knew it existed, but this is so much better than I expected. I expected young 13-year-olds with laptop mics, but nope. You all sounded like teens with good mics, and you guys are actually playing really well. This actually blew my mind. However, the game would soon lose its spot as one of the top FPS games on Roblox, and there were three major reasons behind its downfall, starting with being called the ripoff of CSGO. Undoubtedly, the core gameplay and mechanics of CSGO are very similar to that of Counter Blox. After all, it was created as an alternative to CSGO. However, it is the same reason why it has fallen out of favor with its own audience. Both the games follow the exact gameplay, maps, and every other mechanic in the game. The selection of weapons in Counter Blox is also identical to that of its counterparts. Counter Blox also took a page out of CSGO's book when it came to the skins and cases. However, unlike Counter-Strike, where the players had to spend real money to buy cases and skins, Counter Blox required players not to have to spend a single penny to buy these cases. The free case system was one of the major reasons why Counter Blox became so popular, as it encouraged players to grind for hours a day to earn a currency called credits to buy cases, and try to obtain rare and exclusive skins which can be traded with other players. But here's where things turned problematic. As the trading was player-driven, some players started buying and selling skins using real money. Since the illegal trading started happening outside of Roblox, a lot of players were getting scammed, while others faced the risk of getting banned as it wasn't allowed on the platform. Before we continue with the rest of the video, I just wanted to thank all of you for the support, and I am truly grateful. Also, we are so close to 25,000 subscribers, and it would mean a lot if you could subscribe. Even though Counter Blox has its unique Roblox style and aesthetic, making the games too similar has backfired as the developers didn't bring any new features besides the occasional events. And it's no surprise that the Roblox community has called it a cheap clone and copy of CSGO. However, Counter Blox being called a ripoff doesn't even come close to what is considered to be one of the biggest problems of the game, which is the cheating and hacking. It can be incredibly frustrating for a new player who has joined only to find that there's more than one player on the server with an unfair advantage. Unsurprisingly, cheating seems to be a very common thing in Counter Blox. Despite players regularly reporting running into cheaters, a lot of servers have at least one or more who uses hacks or any other exploits, something which completely ruins the game experience for the normal player. The cheating has also led to a community where players don't really trust and lash out at each other, creating a toxic environment. And in fact, cheating has become so bad that some players have quit the game, as they feel the developers aren't doing much to make the game a better place to have fun. The cheater problem in Counter Blox is getting out of hand. Every other match has a cheater in it with blatant cheats. It is true that each and every game has hackers or some sort of people who want to get a slight edge over others, but the ratio between real players and hackers is highly skewed in Counter Blox, making it a mental frustration for the players. And, at one point, the player count went down all the way to 0. But why? The problem was that one of the developers leaked the source code, so they had to close it down to recode the entire game in a different engine. This was a golden opportunity for the cheaters who exploited this to their advantage, which made the game literally unplayable for the common player. So, with no other option, the team behind Counter Blox had to shut it down, which led to many players leaving the game. A developer even put out a tweet asking the players to be a little patient while they bring the game back, stating that, "We intend on bringing the game back, but it will take some time. We have no intentions of just letting the game fester, so I kindly ask for your patience." This led to many players leaving the game or switching to other FPS games on Roblox, which severely hurt its player base. The developer soon released a new version, which was much better compared to the previous one. However, the game was not perceived in the same way and was no longer interesting for the players. But the major reason behind Counter Blox's downfall has to be CSGO going completely free to play, which is a big deal if you consider that Counter Blox offered the same selling point as the original game. If someone is interested in the classic Counter-Strike gameplay, why would they play Counter Blox when they can just download it from Steam for absolutely free? The original game is available right there with polished graphics and gameplay when compared to that of Counter Blox, with one Reddit user stating that, as a shooter game, the most important part of development is making sure that the actual combat is fair, fun, and consistent, and this game doesn't come close to any of those. High ping rates, terrible tick rate, awful hit reg, laggy and inaccurate hitboxes. So, when something better is available for free, it really reduces the appeal for a game like Counter Blox as something to play. Not only that, the developers of Rolv have stopped updating the game as they are much more focused on one of their other projects, Arsenal. Arsenal is also a first-person game which is based on the Arms Race game mode, which unsurprisingly is also inspired by CSGO. Right from its release, the game was well received by the public, and currently stands at the 14th place in the list of games with the most visits. The game also won the Roblox Game of the Year, which more or less incentivized the developers to focus more on Arsenal rather than Counter Blox. However, many old players are not pleased with the decision, with some seeing it as a betrayal from the developers. To see Counter Blox in its current state is honestly very depressing to me. I do think that it is all possible for its glory to be brought back, but the developers at Rolv seem dedicated to Arsenal and never on Counter Blox. Currently, Counter Blox has over 2,000 active players, with more than 1 billion visits ever since its release, and only time will tell whether the Rolv developers will actually start updating the game.